Americans call it freedom, but somehow everything comes with a rule. They built a nation on the idea of complete novelty, a fresh start separate from the burdens of European history. There, everything could be remade, improved, and optimized. A building with a 50-year lifespan is considered significant. 100 years is a historical landmark needing careful preservation. So, the moment an American stands before a 600-year-old building is not merely a tourist experience. It is a silent cultural collision, a confrontation with a completely alien concept of time. Their first reaction is often not pure awe, but a deep-seated confusion, almost an irritation, because their brain, programmed by a high-performance society, immediately tries to categorize, analyze, and above all, find a management solution for what they are witnessing. They look up at stone walls that have witnessed the plague, religious wars, and the rise and fall of dynasties. And the first question that pops into their head is often, how do they handle the insulation? Or, who is responsible for maintaining the roof? They think about building codes, insurance, heating bills in winter. They imagine a neighborhood committee having to convene to discuss repainting the facade and feel dizzy from the complexity. In America, everything has a clearly outlined long-term plan, an allocated budget, and a predictable depreciation cycle. A 600-year-old building is the embodiment of absurdity to that mindset. It has no long-term plan other than to continue standing. It has outlived all depreciation. It exists outside every economic category they know. Its existence poses a quietly challenging question to the entire American philosophy of replacement. In America, if something is old, you replace it. If it's slow, you upgrade it. If it's obsolete, you tear it down and build anew. Their cities are ever-changing entities, a ceaseless symphony of bulldozer and excavator noise. History is framed and displayed in museums, safe, harmless, and separate from the pulse of modern life. But here, on this narrow street in a European town, history is not an exhibit. It is the wall you lean against to make way for a truck. It is the pub in the basement where you drink beer. It is the house people still wake up in every morning. There is no separation. This continuity is what is dizzying. It evokes a strange feeling, almost envy, of a world where things don't need to constantly prove their worth through newness. And then that American realizes a simple and disconcerting truth. There is no project manager for a 6-century-long existence. There is no CEO of the 600-year-old building. There are no quarterly status updates on its structural sustainability. It simply is. It has survived countless plans, countless budgets, countless lives that have come and gone. It doesn't care about Yelp reviews or the latest building code. This truth, that something can be so enduring and sustainable without constant intervention, optimization, and monitoring, is almost an insult to the American spirit. It raises a silent, threatening question. Are all our controls, rules, and detailed blueprints truly necessary? Or are we just building things too poorly, too flimsily, that they require such constant management just to survive a century? That moment, when initial admiration gives way to a deep doubt about the very foundation of modern society, is the first gift this ancient building gives to the visitor from the New World. And then they step inside. If the exterior was a conceptual shock, the interior is an assault on every sense and preconception about living space. This is where every American theory of efficiency and comfort is shattered into pieces. The outside might be a meticulously carved stone facade, a silent statement of eternity. But inside, things become intimate, messy, and profoundly human. The walls are not straight. They have curves, tilts, as if trying to dodge an invisible punch from time. The floors are not level. They slope mysteriously, making you feel like you've stepped onto the deck of an old ship. And the staircases, they are a whole other story. Winding wooden or stone steps, improbably narrow and steep to the point of being nearly vertical. They were not designed for comfort, but for existence. They are narrow pathways connecting spaces, a necessary concession to physics and to defense. An American standing in this room immediately starts calculating. They look around and estimate the real estate value. This studio apartment in Soho would be $5,000 a month, they think to themselves. And then, Their gaze stops at the small windows, the lead-lined panes letting in barely enough light, let alone a view. They think about how horrific the electricity bill would be to light this place. They touch the damp, cold stone wall and shiver, thinking of heating costs. They try to imagine installing modern wiring, fiber optics, or even a standard power outlet, and their head spins. How do you make a phone call? How do you get a Wi-Fi signal through those 2-foot-thick stone walls? This room, with all its historical grandeur, seems to defy every basic convenience of 21st century life. But then a subtle shift occurs. After the initial calculations of cost and inconvenience, another awareness begins to creep in. They realize this room existed before the concept of an electricity bill, of the internet, even before the modern concept of privacy. People lived, loved, argued, fell ill, and died in these spaces without a single status update. They were warmed by fire burning in a large hearth and by wearing multiple layers of clothing. They entertained themselves by conversing, reading, actual books made of vellum, or playing music. That existence, while harsh and challenging, had an authenticity, an intensity of feeling that makes modern life, with all its invisible comforts, sometimes feel thin, abstract, and distant. This is the great paradox. Americans worship convenience, but they crave authenticity. And nothing is more authentic than a wooden floor hollowed out in the middle, created by countless footsteps over 600 years. It is not a distressed decorative effect. It is actual wear. And that wear tells a story. Every scratch on a bronze doorknob polished over centuries is a story. Every worn, concave step is a story of endless comings and goings. In America, we love stories, but we design things to avoid leaving traces. We use easy-to-clean materials, scratch-resistant surfaces, replaceable furniture. We build a world against wear and tear, and in doing so, we inadvertently erase the evidence of our own lives. We live in houses that may never be able to tell a story because they are designed to exist without any story at all, to be easily sold or remodeled. So, when an American touches a rough stone wall in an old castle, they are not just touching history. They are touching a completely different concept of time and matter. In America, time is linear. It moves forward towards progress, newness, replacement. But in this 600-year-old building, time is a spiral. The past is not behind you. It is right beside you. It is in the chill emanating from the wall. It is in the creak of a floorboard under your foot. You cannot separate from it. And for a culture built on the idea of a new beginning, of shedding the past, this is a deeply disorienting experience. It makes you wonder, are we losing something important in our obsession with convenience and efficiency? Will the walls of our own houses have anything to tell 6 centuries from now, or will they just be silent? Finally, after the initial wonder subsides, and after taking enough photos to prove to everyone on social media that they were there, a question hangs in the air, often uttered in a small, skeptical tone, but is it actually safe? This is perhaps the most pure, most genuine American question. It is not about beauty, historical mystique, or artistic value. It is about practical survivability. It is about liability. It is about control. Because in America, a structure this ancient and seemingly fragile would be surrounded by a forest of red ropes, keep-out signs, surveillance cameras, and a team of grim-faced security guards. You would have to sign a lengthy liability waiver before stepping through the door. There would be a clearly posted safety procedure. Every risk calculated, every hazard warned, every experience controlled. But here you just buy a ticket and walk in. You are allowed to touch the walls. You are allowed to feel the rough, cold stone under your palm. You are allowed to sit on an old oak bench feeling its wear. You can even walk up the near-vertical staircases with little more than a flimsy rope to hold on to. This default trust in the integrity of the structure and in individual caution is astounding and also terrifying to an American. It feels reckless, and then, as they look closer, they begin to understand. The safety is not in the signs and rules. It is in the structure itself. These stones have withstood earthquakes, cannon sieges, floods, and storms that no modern building code could have predicted. They are not safe because they comply with regulations. They are safe because they were built extraordinarily, with a redundancy, density, and a deep understanding of material that our digital sophistication often lacks. We, in modern society, build thinner walls, calculating the precise minimum amount of material needed to bear the load, no more, no less. We optimize for cost and efficiency. We use light, strong synthetic materials with calculated lifespans. But that optimization has no room for surprises, for the unpredictable ravages of time. The masons from 600 years ago did not optimize in that way. They built to endure. They built walls so thick you could fit a room inside them. They used wooden beams so large they seemed oversized. They had no choice but to make it sturdy enough to last, because they wouldn't get a second chance. And there is a very big, very profound difference between building to meet standards and building to endure. One is about compliance, the other is about commitment. When that American leaves the 600-year-old building and steps back into the glaring light of the 21st century, a subtle change occurs in their perception. Their modern world, with its gleaming steel and glass skyscrapers, its perfect asphalt roads, its self-driving vehicles, suddenly looks temporary. It looks new, shiny, full of appeal, but also strangely fragile. It is like an expensive high-tech outfit, impressive to look at but easily torn. And that old, cumbersome building, with all its roughness, darkness, and inconvenience, suddenly looks disconcertingly solid. It does not need our approval, our protection, or our constant management. It will be there perhaps long after our most modern, gleaming skyscrapers have become rubble, excavated by the archaeologists of the future, who will marvel at our transience. Perhaps Americans call it freedom, freedom from the past. Freedom to start over, freedom to build things their own way. But when they see a 600-year-old building, they perceive another kind of freedom. Freedom from the anxiety of existence. Freedom from the need to constantly update, repair, replace, and validate one's worth. The freedom to simply be steadfast and immutable, despite the upheavals of the age. And in that silent moment, as they stand among the old stones, they can, for just a second, feel the weight of time not as a burden, but as a foundation. And they walk away with a lingering question, one that might haunt them long after the trip is over. Is all our progress truly moving forward, or is it just making us move faster on an increasingly fragile foundation? And is there anything we are building today that could provide a convincing answer to a curious visitor from 600 years in the future?